When the son told his parents they weren't welcome for Christmas, Augusto just smiled, squeezed his wife's hand, and swallowed a silence that felt heavier than any word. That night, he would find out how far a son's ingratitude could go, and a few weeks later, that same son would learn the price of turning his own father and mother into strangers inside his home. Before we dive into today's story, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way, you never miss the emotional journeys and life lessons we share here. Marcelo's brown leather couch sagged a little in the middle, right where Augusto was sitting. He always noticed those details, the leather just starting to crease, the seam along the edge slightly pulled, the smell of expensive cleaning product mixed with the sweet perfume Luisa spread through the house in the form of scented candles. Beside him, Helena smoothed her simple cotton skirt, trying not to wrinkle it. It didn't match that magazine-perfect room, full of shine and polish, but it was her nice dress, the one she wore when she wanted to show respect. She had spent the entire morning ironing the hem, focused, as if the fabric might somehow help bring her closer to her son. "If you want, I could make Christmas turkey this year," said Augusto, leaning back a little on the couch, careful not to touch the pale cushions too much. "The one with the bread and herbs stuffing your grandma loved so much, Marcelo. Remember how she'd laugh and say mine tasted more like home than hers?" The words hung in the air, crossing the wide living room and mixing with the sweet smell of the expensive vanilla candles burning on the marble coffee table. The Christmas tree, enormous, almost touched the ceiling. It was so tall that someone simple like Helena, when she walked in, had felt as if she'd been shrunk. Marcelo shifted on the couch beside his wife, a small movement Helena noticed immediately. His shoulder tightened, as if he were bracing to be hit. He ran his thumb along his gold wedding band, the cold shine of the metal catching the warm yellow light from the crystal chandelier above. Chandelier that Helena knew had been bought right after they remodeled the living room. A remodel they could never have done without Augusto's help. "Dad," Marcelo said, clearing his throat. "Mom." Helena turned her face toward him, a smile already waiting on her lips, like a child expecting to hear good news. "This year, unfortunately, you won't be able to come here for Christmas," Marcelo said, his voice breaking halfway through the sentence. The words hit Augusto like someone had thrown open a window in the middle of a storm. For a second, he thought he had heard wrong. He looked first at his son, then at Helena. She blinked slowly, as if she too were trying to process it. "What was that, my son?" Helena asked in a tone so sweet it hurt. "I didn't quite understand." Marcelo took a deep breath but didn't lift his eyes. He seemed fascinated by the white marble tabletop, by an almost invisible stain someone had left there. "Luisa's parents are coming to spend Christmas with us this year," he said, "and they prefer the dinner to be just with their family. They have their traditions." Helena felt something cold run up the back of her neck and down her spine. She looked around again, noticing once more the imported linen curtains she herself had helped pick out when Luisa said the old ones were too plain. She remembered the remodel payments, the loan, the nights Augusto had slept poorly because the numbers didn't add up. "Just with their family," Helena repeated slowly. There was a quiet, almost gentle pain in the way she spoke. "And what are we then, Marcelo?" asked Augusto, looking straight at his son. "A wrong address." Marcelo pressed his lips together and finally raised his eyes. There was shame there, but no courage. "Dad, please," Marcelo said. "Don't say it like that. You know what Luisa's parents are like. They're traditional. They like things their way. It's nothing personal against you." "Traditional," Augusto repeated, His eyes swept around the room. The light wood floors, replaced 2 years earlier, the recessed lighting in the ceiling, the crown moulding running along the entire room. Every detail had for him a number behind it. Installments, interest, nights of calculations. "And what kind of tradition is that, Marcello?" Augusto asked quietly. "The tradition of removing father and mother from the Christmas table?" Louisa appeared in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a linen dish towel. "Babe, did you explain?" Louisa asked, without looking directly at Augusto and Helena. "I did," Marcello said in a thin voice. She leaned against the frame, apron spotless, hair up in a carefully messy bun. Behind her, in the kitchen, a large stand mixer, the brand she'd wanted so badly, rested on the light stone countertop. Helena remembered the conversation. "It's for my baking project, father-in-law, an investment," Louisa had said. And Augusto, without arguing, had handed over his card. "Mr. Augusto, Mrs. Helena," Louisa said now, with an expression that imitated concern. "I hope you understand. My parents are very strict about our family traditions. They like certain dishes, certain conversations. It's just what they're used to." "And what are we in all of that?" Helena asked, looking at her with a gentleness that hid broken glass. "An inconvenience in the middle of your customs?" Louisa sighed, pretending patience. "It's not that, Mrs. Helena. It's just that sometimes you end up a little out of place. My mom likes to talk about traveling, foreign literature, about certain things. And Mr. Augusto, well, he likes sports, talking about his company, that kind of thing. It doesn't really fit." Augusto tilted his head as if listening to a diagnosis. "I like to talk about what life left me," Augusto said. "About the company, yes, because that's what put food on the table and helped pay for this roof over your heads. And I like to talk about family, about my son, my wife, you, but I guess that's not acceptable conversation for very refined people, is it?" Louisa's nose wrinkled just slightly, a small gesture, but full of disgust. "Don't put it like that, Mr. Augusto. You know, I've always been very grateful." Helena cut her off with a tired smile. "You've already decided, my dear," Helena said. "No need to waste words decorating what already hurts." She stood up. Her legs shook a little, but she leaned on the edge of the table and kept her head high. Her eyes traveled over the photos on the wall. Marcello and Louisa at the beach. Marcello with his first new car. Marcello and their first child, still a baby, in Louisa's arms. In all of them, Augusto and Helena appeared once, twice at most, always in the background, always slightly off to the side, as if they'd been invited at the last minute. "Son," Helena said, adjusting her simple coat over her shoulders, "just tell me one thing so I know where I stand from now on. If there's no place for us at Christmas dinner, is there a place for us some other day? Or is it better we learn not to expect anything at all anymore?" Marcello closed his eyes for a second. "We can schedule something the weekend after," Marcello said. "A pizza, something simple. Just the four of us. It's easier." "A pizza after Christmas," Augusto repeated, smiling in a way that never reached his eyes. "As if Christmas were an appointment you can reschedule." He rose slowly, feeling his knees protest with the weight of the years. At the door, he turned, without looking much at Louisa, only at his son. "Marcello," Augusto said, "next time your mother-in-law talks about tradition, you remind her that in ours, father and mother sit at the table. Even when they didn't go to college, even when they never traveled abroad, even when all they know to talk about is bricks, cement, and pot roast." "Dad, don't make a scene," Marcello said. Augusto breathed deeply, feeling Helena beside him, quiet but steady. "I wish you both a Merry Christmas," Augusto said. "And tell your parents, Louisa, that I wish them a very bright one." Helena took her husband's arm gently, the way she always did when she felt he was carrying more weight than he could bear. "Let's go, Augusto," Helena said simply. Outside, the December air hit their faces like a cold slap. The street in the subdivision was full of lights, red bows, wreaths on doors, houses shining, children's laughter drifting from some nearby window. Everything seemed to celebrate something they were now officially excluded from. When they reached the car, Augusto unlocked it with a short click. Inside, there was the simple smell of cheap disinfectant, the seat worn from use, the dashboard with a small crack. He started the engine, but didn't pull out. He stayed there, staring ahead, not really seeing. Helena looked at his hands on the steering wheel. They were the hands of someone who never had luxury. Strong, calloused, a bit swollen from decades of work. She rested her hand gently on his. "You're very quiet," Helena said. He breathed, his eyes still forward. "I'm listening," Augusto said. "Listening to what?" Helena asked softly. "The sound of something breaking in here," Augusto said, bringing his free hand to his chest. "But I don't think I'm the one who broke this time." Helena sighed, leaning her head back against the seat. The silence in the car was filled by the distant echo of a child's laugh. Helena thought of their grandson, Tomas, 4 years old, who always ran to hug them whenever they showed up. He had no idea about the adult conversations swirling around him. "Are you angry at him?" Helena asked, without looking at Augusto. Augusto took a long time to answer. "I pity him," he said at last. "I pity the man he's choosing to be, but that doesn't mean I'll keep letting him walk all over us." Helena turned toward him. "What are you thinking, Augusto?" Helena asked. She already knew that look. She'd seen it too many times before tough decisions. The loan, selling the car, expanding the shop. "I'm thinking about how we let it get this far," Augusto said. "I'm thinking about the checks I signed, the bills I paid, the times you went without, so their house wouldn't. I'm thinking about how much those curtains cost, that floor, that chandelier, and how much it cost us to hear today that we're a bad fit for their environment." Helena bit her lip, tasting the salt of tears that stubbornly refused to fall. "If I'd known each transfer came with this kind of humiliation, I would have baked a simple cake and hugged our son in a rented apartment," Helena said, her voice thick. Augusto switched on the headlights. The street lit up in front of them, but what lit up inside him was something else entirely. "Helena," Augusto said, steady, "today I realized I've been financing a life where I don't belong. I helped raise the walls that now shut us out, and that ends tonight." She looked at him, startled. "What are you going to do?" Helena asked. He pulled out of the driveway slowly, the subdivision lights shrinking behind them. "First, I'll take you home," Augusto said. "Then I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago." "And what's that?" Helena asked. Augusto gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. "I'm going to pick up the phone," he said, "and make a call." Helena felt a chill run down her back. It wasn't fear. It was that strange sense of standing at the edge of a bridge, knowing that once you cross it, nothing will ever be the same. The car turned the corner and disappeared from the decorated street, carrying with it 2 broken hearts and the silent seed of a justice that was only beginning to sprout. The city was already starting to light up for the evening when Augusto and Helena got home. The modest building where they lived had no decorations on the facade, just a crooked little wreath hanging on the door of the ground-floor apartment. In the hallway, the smell of home-cooked food mixed with the faint scent of cheap cleaner. Helena climbed the stairs slowly, her legs heavy, not from physical tiredness but from something else, a kind of exhaustion of the soul. Augusto opened the apartment door and switched on the light in the living room. The room was small but tidy. An old but clean couch, a simple bookcase with a few books, an outdated TV. On the wall, a framed photo from some long-ago Christmas. In the picture, Helena held a big turkey, wearing a floral apron, face shiny with sweat from spending the entire day in the kitchen, but happy. Marcelo, still a teenager, had his arms around them both. No one in that photograph seemed to imagine what the future would bring. Helena set her purse down on a chair and stayed there, standing, staring at the photo. "He was so little," Helena whispered, "and he looked at us like we were his whole world." Augusto answered without looking at the wall. "Maybe that's the problem," he said, taking off his jacket. "We kept looking at him like he was still that boy in the picture, and we forgot he chose to become another kind of man." Helena turned slowly. "Will you be mad at me if I say I still wish he'd call and apologize?" Helena asked. Augusto looked at her for a moment, his gaze tired but tender. "Helena," he said, "you can wish for anything you want. What you can't do is keep volunteering to be hurt." She sat at the kitchen table, ran her hand along the worn wooden surface, and took a deep breath. That was when Augusto's cell phone began to vibrate on the counter. The name on the screen sliced through the air like a blade. "It's Luisa," Augusto said. Helena lifted her head, her expression somewhere between alert and injured. "Are you going to answer?" she asked. Augusto stared at the phone for a few seconds, as if weighing an old enemy. "I am," he said at last. "It's time to hear everything she has to say, and everything I have to say back." He slid his finger across the screen. "Hello," Augusto said, flat. "Mr. Augusto," came Luisa's voice, syrupy but with a clear note of impatience underneath. "I'm so glad you picked up. I wanted to talk about what happened here today." Helena stood and walked closer, stopping beside him, not touching, but there. "There was no accident, Luisa," Augusto said. "There was a decision. You decided to cut us out." On the other end, he heard an exaggerated sigh. "Look, you're taking it the wrong way," Luisa said. "I understand that you and Mrs. Helena are more sensitive, but you have to see our side too." "Your side?" Augusto repeated, feeling his blood heat but keeping his voice low. "My parents are very accomplished people, Mr. Augusto," Luisa said, and Helena could hear the change in tone. Colder, more distant. "They move in a different world, with different habits. They studied abroad, traveled the world, move in certain circles. You know, they're used to more refined environments. They talk about international politics, literature, global economics." "And I talk about what?" Augusto asked, dangerously calm. "Cement and cheap cuts of meat?" Luisa let out a short laugh that had nothing gentle in it. "That's not what I'm saying," she said, "but you have to admit sometimes you're a little off topic. You talk loud, tell stories about construction sites, customers, simple things. My mother doesn't know what to say. It starts to look like you don't fit in." Helena closed her eyes as if each word were a drop of acid. Augusto glanced sideways at her and saw her jaw tremble. "I don't fit in," Augusto repeated slowly. "In the house I helped pay for, at the table I helped buy, in the living room I helped remodel." Luisa sighed, now clearly irritated. "Mr. Augusto, please. No one is talking about money. You're always bringing that up. It's not classy." Helena had to lean against the counter. Augusto felt something inside him click silently. "Not classy?" Augusto said. "Is it classy to leave your own parents alone at Christmas?" "It's classy for you to understand your place, Mr. Augusto," Luisa replied, and finally the mask dropped. "It's no shame to recognize where you belong. You're a hard-working, honest man. No one is saying otherwise. But my parents' world is different. You don't have the same level of education. You don't need to be offended by that. Everyone in their space." Helena stared at him, horrified, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Say that again," Augusto said, his voice so low it seemed to come from someplace very deep. "I'm saying you need to know where you fit," Luisa said. My mother even liked Mrs. Helena's cooking back when we were just starting out, but now we're on a different level. They're used to more sophisticated dinners, special wines, more delicate dishes. Not everyone gets that. Helena put a hand to her chest, as if searching for something missing inside. Augusto took a long breath, and when he spoke, his voice was eerily calm. "Do you remember, Louisa," he said, "all the times you sat at our table, when it was just you two and money was tight? Remember how many times you ate reheated beans and even asked for seconds, saying it tasted like home-cooked food? Remember who bought your first stove when yours broke?" "That was at the beginning," Louisa said quickly. "Things change." "Yes," Augusto said, "things change. You climb a rung, and suddenly the very ladder that got you there is too ugly to show in the picture." A heavy silence fell on the line. "Mr. Augusto," Louisa said at last, her voice drier, "maybe it's best we end this conversation. I only called because I thought you'd be mature enough to understand that certain decisions have nothing to do with love, only context. But if you want to turn this into some kind of pride issue, that's on you. Just don't expect me to keep coddling people who don't know how to behave." Helena's eyes went wide, as if she'd been slapped. "Louisa," Augusto said, and this time he was the one taking deep breaths. "Listen carefully. This conversation doesn't end the way you want it to. It ends the way I decide. You chose to pull our chairs away from the table. Now I'm choosing to get up off the floor." "Don't be dramatic, Mr. Augusto," she started. "Enough," Augusto said. "As of today, I stop financing the shame you feel about us. That's all you need to know." She laughed, a short, disbelieving laugh. "You can't be serious," Louisa said. "You'd never do that to your own son. That would be petty." "Wait and see," Augusto said. He hung up. The silence that followed was so dense it felt almost solid. Helena stared at the phone in her husband's hand as if it were some strange object. "She really said that?" Helena asked, her voice faltering. "That we have to know our place?" Augusto looked at his wife, and what was in his eyes wasn't just hurt. It was a kind of resolve. "Helena," he said, pulling out a chair and sitting at the table. "Sit here with me." She obeyed, still stunned. "How many years have we been helping them?" Augusto asked. "Never asking anything, just trusting it was for our son's good?" Helena started counting on her fingers, but got lost halfway through. "Since before Tomas was born," she said. "We helped with the down payment on the first apartment, then when they traded up for the bigger house, then the remodel, then the mortgage payments, then when he lost his job." Augusto stood again, walked to the small closet in the hallway, and came back with a dark blue folder bulging with papers. "It's all here," he said, opening it on the table. "Every bank statement, every transfer receipt, every loan we took." Helena stared at the papers as if they were photos from a wedding that was ending. "You kept everything?" Helena asked. "I did," Augusto answered, "but I never had the courage to add it up. I always thought if I saw the number, I'd feel like an idiot. Today, I feel like an idiot anyway, so at least I want to know how much that stupidity cost." He picked up an old calculator, its keys worn, and started punching in numbers, paper by paper. Helena watched in silence, hearing only the click of the keys and the distant sound of a car passing on the street. $2,800 a month, Augusto muttered, "for 5 years." The numbers stacked up on the tiny screen. 33,600, plus 33,600, plus one-time payments for remodeling, furniture, appliances, electric bills, HOA fees. "Augusto," Helena said when he stopped, his eyes fixed on the display. "How much is it?" He took a deep breath. "Over 200,000 reais, Augusto said slowly. "Money from our future, our rest, our medication, your knee treatment we keep putting off. My dream of taking you to see the ocean again, just the two of us." Helena raised her hand to her mouth, shocked. "All that?" she whispered. "And in the end, We don't even have a seat at the Christmas table." He set the calculator down like someone laying a body on the table. "We don't have a seat because we bought a table we were never really invited to," Augusto said. He picked up his phone again. "What are you going to do?" Helena asked. "I'm calling the bank," Augusto replied. "And I'm taking our name off this leash." Helena watched him dial. Her heart pounded, but mixed into the fear there was a thin thread of something new, relief. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you today?" came the recorded voice, followed by a human attendant. "My name is Augusto Nogueira," he said firmly, "and I want to cancel an automatic transfer, today." The attendant asked for information, checked numbers, ran security questions. Augusto answered everything with the calm of someone who, for the first time in a long while, felt he was protecting his own home. "I see a monthly transfer here for 2,800 reais, the attendant said. "To an account in the name of Marcelo Nogueira and Luisa Nogueira, correct?" Helena closed her eyes when she heard their son's name in a stranger's voice. "Correct," Augusto said. "I want to cancel it. Immediately. I don't want another cent leaving my account for that destination." "Perfectly fine, Mr. Augusto," the attendant replied. "As of this moment, the transfer has been cancelled. You will no longer have this programmed debit. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Augusto looked at Helena. She had her hands clasped together like she was praying. "Yes," Augusto said. "You can note down that today, for the first time in years, I managed to say no." The attendant chuckled politely, unaware of the weight of his words. "All right, then. Have a good night, sir." "I will," Augusto said, hanging up. He set the phone down on the table next to the folder of documents. For a moment, they just stared at each other, not knowing what to say. Helena broke the silence. "I'm scared," she said bluntly. "Scared of what'll happen to them. To Tomas. Scared God will think I'm a bad mother for turning my back." Augusto leaned forward, taking both her hands in his. "Helena," he said, with gentle firmness, "turning your back is what they did to us today. What we're doing is just refusing to keep paying the bill for their choices. Tomas, he's innocent, and I'll be his grandfather just the same, but I won't be the man who pays to be humiliated anymore." She took a deep breath, and something in her expression shifted. The pain was still there, but now there was a new line beside it. Dignity. "I'm with you," Helena said at last. "If we're going to fall, we fall together, just not on our knees." Augusto gave her a sad but genuine smile. "This time it's not us who'll fall," he said. "It's just their mask, and I'm not pushing anyone. I'm just taking my hand out from underneath." That night, after Helena went to bed, Augusto stayed at the table for a long time, papers spread out in front of him. He grabbed a smaller folder, made copies, wrote dates, took notes. With each document he organized, he didn't just see numbers. He saw sleepless nights, missed medication, dinners too simple for the hunger they'd felt, while the money kept flowing to someone else's house. When he finished, he went into the living room, switched off the lights, and stood by the window, looking out over the city. From some distant apartment came loud laughter. In another, a cheap string of Christmas lights flickered on a balcony. Life went on, indifferent to the drama of parents cut out of their own son's holiday. But inside him, an old wire sparked back to life, his ability to protect what was his. 2 days later, the apartment smelled of freshly brewed coffee when Augusto's cell phone started ringing again. It was Saturday morning, the sunlight slanting in through the kitchen window, drawing squares of light on the worn floor. This time, the name on the screen didn't surprise him. "Luisa," Helena said, looking at the phone on the table. Augusto watched the screen flashing. "This time she's not calling about tradition," he said. "She's calling to ask for a favor." He answered. "Yes, Luisa?" Augusto said. Mr. Augusto, she said, with a fake lightness that fooled no one. Good afternoon. I need a little favor. I figured, Augusto replied. My parents are arriving this afternoon, Luisa said. Their flight lands at 3 p.m. at the airport. Since Marcelo is tied up with some things at work and I'm finishing the dinner prep, we thought you and Mrs. Helena could go pick them up. You know the way. You're used to driving. It would be a kindness. Helena tightened her grip on her mug, trying not to let the coffee shake. Augusto glanced over at his wife, giving her a small nod, asking her to stay calm. Luisa, he said calmly, yesterday you explained that I don't fit in at Christmas dinner, but I fit behind the wheel like a chauffeur, is that it? There was a brief silence on the other end. No need to put it like that, Mr. Augusto, she said, her tone already showing irritation. It's just a practical thing. You'll be spending Christmas somewhere else, okay? But being family means helping when needed. My parents aren't used to taxis, buses, that kind of thing, and they'll have a lot of luggage. Not just anyone can handle that. Helena felt her face flush. Augusto smiled, a sad, ironic smile. They're not used to taxis, he repeated, but they're used to being served. I get it. Exactly, Luisa said, not hearing the poison in her own words. So you could get there, say, 15-20 minutes before they land. That way, when they come out, they'll already see someone they can trust. Mrs. Helena can come too to keep them company. My mother pays a lot of attention to appearances. Helena pressed her lips together, trying to hold back tears. Augusto felt something fall into place inside his chest, as if finally every piece was sliding into the correct slot. Luisa, Augusto said, with a new, steady calm, I'm going to give you a very clear answer, so there's no misunderstanding. All right, she said, I'm not going to the airport. The silence on the line was so thick, Helena could almost hear the muscles in Luisa's face reacting. Excuse me, Luisa said slowly. I don't understand. I'm not going to the airport, Augusto repeated. Not me, not Helena. Today we're nobody's drivers. We're busy learning what our place really is. Mr. Augusto, this is ridiculous, Luisa exploded. You're going to leave two elderly people, my parents, alone at an airport after a flight? That's inhuman. It's low. It's small. Augusto looked at Helena, who now stared back at him with eyes full of tears, but shining with something that looked a lot like pride. They have money, Augusto answered. They can hire a taxi, a rideshare, a private car. People at their level don't end up stranded over a simple ride. And honestly, Luisa, after hearing what you think of me, I'd say the last thing your parents need is the shame of being seen coming out of the airport in the car of a barely educated construction worker. Luisa's breathing sped up on the other end. I never said that, she shot back. You're twisting everything. And another thing, this has consequences. You're choosing conflict, Augusto. Don't come crying later saying you weren't warned. So are you, Augusto said firmly. When you cut us from your table, you chose conflict. You just never thought I'd answer. Good afternoon, Luisa. I hope your parents have a pleasant flight. The rest is not my problem. He hung up. Helena stood rooted in place, holding her coffee cup so tightly her fingers had gone white. Do you think we went too far? Helena asked, with that painful honesty that was so hers. Too far was taking out a bank loan to fix someone else's house, Augusto said. Today, we just stayed home. She took a deep breath and for the first time since this whole mess began, let out a tiny smile. I bet that airport is a mess right now, Helena whispered. Your mother-in-law looking around with that face that says nothing is ever good enough. Augusto tilted his head, picturing the scene. Maybe, for the first time, they're getting a taste of what it's like to wait for someone who never comes, Augusto said. We're experts at that. The rest of the afternoon moved at a strange pace. Helena washed dishes, cleaned out the closet, set aside clothes to donate. Augusto fixed a wobbly shelf, changed a burned-out light bulb, fussed with an old outlet. Little things that had been postponed for years, always with the same excuse. I'll get to it later. Right now Marcelo needs me. As evening fell, Augusto's cell phone began to ring non-stop. First Luisa's number, then an unknown number, then Marcelo, then the unknown number again. The buzzing of the phone on the table seemed to fill the whole apartment. "Aren't you going to answer?" Helena asked, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Not today," Augusto said, switching the phone off completely. "Today, they're the ones waiting." Helena leaned against the counter, looking at her husband with a mix of astonishment and respect. "You're different, Augusto," she said, "but I like it." He smiled, tired, and walked to the stove. "I'm going to make some soup," he said, lighting the burner. "Simple, but ours, and tomorrow we'll see what the next chapter of this story looks like." That calm didn't last long. A few hours later, when the sky was dark and the smell of soup still hung in the air, someone started pounding on the apartment door. It wasn't a normal knock. It was fist after fist, hard, impatient. Helena jumped, letting the ladle clatter against the pot. "It must be them," she whispered. Augusto walked to the door, heart racing, but each step steady. He looked through the peephole. On the other side stood Alvaro and Beatriz, Luisa's parents, faces flushed with anger, and Luisa right behind them, eyes blazing. He took a deep breath, turned the lock, and opened. Alvaro pushed in without asking permission, his expensive cologne flooding the small hallway. "Are you out of your mind?" Alvaro shouted, jabbing a finger into Augusto's chest. "We waited over an hour at that airport for you. My wife gets dizzy spells. I have high blood pressure. What kind of man does that?" Beatrice stepped in right after him, adjusting her coat. "This is barbaric, Augusto," she said, her voice sharp. "A level of bad manners I didn't expect from someone so helped by us." Helena's eyes widened. "Helped?" Helena repeated, barely above a whisper. Luisa came in, slamming the door shut behind her. "Congratulations, Mr. Augusto," she said, her face twisted. "You did it. In front of my parents, you lowered yourself in a way I never imagined. They had to take a taxi. My parents, with luggage at their age." Helena stepped forward, cheeks flushed. "And what about us?" Helena asked with a firmness that surprised even her. "At our age, we had to stand there and hear we don't belong in your kitchen, your living room, your conversation. You think that's normal?" Alvaro looked Helena up and down with faint disgust. "Ma'am," Alvaro said, "no one is talking about age. We're talking about standards. You and your husband are simple people. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is a limit. There's such a thing as decorum. What your husband did today is the kind of thing people with no sense do, and I won't have my family's name tied to that kind of instability." Helena's hand trembled, but Augusto stepped to her side as if taking up a guard post. "Mr. Alvaro," Augusto said, serious, "for 5 years the money that left this house kept your daughter and son-in-law living like they belonged to your class. I paid their electric bill, their water, their HOA dues. I made car payments, bought furniture, paid for remodeling their kitchen, all in silence. And now you're here to lecture me about limits?" Alvaro's face turned red, but he didn't back down. "Who asked you to do that?" he shot back. "I never asked you for anything. If you decided to be generous, that's on you. Generosity doesn't buy you the right to be rude, and arrogance doesn't buy you the right to treat people like servants," Augusto replied. Luisa, unable to hold back any longer, stepped forward. "Listen here," Luisa said. "You're too small to think you can buy respect with money from construction work. My father has always been a respected man in this town. Banking, management, trusted positions. If he wants, he can finish your company's good name with a single phone call." You think anyone's going to hire a man who abandons an elderly couple at the airport? I didn't abandon anyone, Augusto said. I just stopped serving. There's a difference. Beatrice crossed her arms. You're going to regret this, Beatrice said, staring at Augusto and Helena in turn. Especially you, Mrs. Helena, a mother behaving this way. Society judges. Helena felt the word mother land like another blow. If there's a court that hurts, it isn't society's, it's the conscience, Helena said, with a firmness that startled even her. And mine is calmer today than it's been in years. Do you know why? Because for the first time, I'm not selling myself in installments just to be tolerated. For a second, no one said a word. The small living room felt too big for so much tension. Alvaro stepped toward the door. Very well, he said. If this is how you want to play it, fine. Just don't complain about the consequences. The real consequence is seeing the truth come out, Augusto said. That hurts. The rest is just noise. They left one by one, trailing expensive perfume and bitterness. When the door finally closed and Augusto turned the deadbolt, the silence inside the apartment felt different, cleaner, more honest. Helena leaned her back against the wall and shut her eyes. Do you think it's over? She asked. No, Augusto said. I think it just started. He walked back to the kitchen, turned off the soup that was boiling too hard, and leaned against the counter, looking at the folder still on the table. They threatened our name, Augusto said, so now it's time to show what their name is hiding. Helena looked at him, serious. What are you going to do, Augusto? She asked. He ran a hand over his face, tired but resolved. I'm going to do what they did to me, Augusto said, except I'll use the truth. Night moved quietly through the little apartment, while Augusto and Helena ate their simple soup, each lost in their thoughts. The steam rose from their bowls and formed small clouds in front of their weary faces. But there was a different flavor at that table now, the bitter taste of disappointment mixed with something Helena didn't quite recognize yet. Strength. After putting the dishes away, Helena tried to straighten the couch, but Augusto was still sitting there, staring at the folder as if it were a treasure map. Only in this case, the treasure was the truth. What are you thinking about? Helena asked, sitting down beside him. Augusto didn't take his eyes off the papers. When people come after my name, I endure it, Augusto said. But when they step on yours, that's different. She gently touched his hand. Augusto, I'm scared, Helena admitted. Scared of this war, scared of Marcelo, scared of what's going to happen to our grandson. Augusto turned to her, eyes tired but firm. Helena, do you really think Marcelo would see Tomas any less if I weren't paying his bills? Augusto asked. He already sees him too little, and even then, only when Luisa allows it. She controls everything. We can't lose what's never really been given. Helena lowered her face and took a slow breath. But what exactly are you planning? She asked. Augusto closed the folder, straightened his back, and spoke in a way that even startled his wife. They want to use other people's opinions against us, Augusto said. Let's see if those opinions stay the same once they know who these people really are. Helena's eyes widened. You're not going to expose Marcelo, are you? Helena asked, almost pleading. He's our son. Augusto breathed deeply. Helena, I'm not going to destroy Marcelo, he said. I'm going to destroy the lie he chose to live in. I'm going to tear off the mask. I'm going to let people see what's really behind that perfect family facade. Helena leaned forward, frightened. Augusto, that's revenge, she said. He shook his head. It's not revenge. It's cause and effect, he said. He paused, then added, Besides, they threw the first punch in public. Now they're going to find out what it feels like when the truth shows up in the same arena. Helena swallowed hard. "And how are you going to do that?" she asked. Augusto got up, walked to the bookcase, and took down the old camera he used back when he visited job sites every day. "Tomorrow is Christmas Eve," he said, adjusting the focus ring. "And according to what Louisa posted online, they're having 12 guests over. Important people. Respected. Admired." "But Augusto, we weren't invited," Helena said. "I know," he said, setting the camera on the table. "But I don't need an invitation to show the truth." Helena stood slowly, her hands shaking. "You're going to photograph something?" she asked, alarmed. "Get proof of something?" Augusto opened the folder and began separating copies of bank statements, transfer receipts, loan documents. "Helena, for 5 years, I've been paying for their life, alone, while they tossed us scraps," he said, holding the folder up. "All of this truth has been stuffed in here. Now it's time to show it to the people who actually matter." Helena sat again, slowly. "Augusto, are you sure about this?" she asked. He walked over, took her hands in his. "Helena, I don't want to destroy anyone," he said. "I just want to take back what's ours, our dignity, our respect." The voice they tried to silence. She breathed deeply and nodded. "If you're by my side, I'll go with you all the way," she said. The smile Augusto gave her was small, sad and full of love. "I've never let go of your hand," he said, "and I'm not starting now." On the morning of December 24th, Helena woke up before the sun. She made coffee, set the table, lit a small, scented candle a neighbor had given her. The apartment was quiet, but there was a different tension in the air, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Augusto walked into the kitchen already dressed, in the only new dress shirt he owned, one Helena had bought months earlier with some sacrifice. "You're really going like that?" Helena asked. "Like what?" he said, puzzled. "Looking sharp," she said without irony, "with your head up." Augusto smiled, but his eyes stayed serious. "Today, I'm not going as a construction worker or as a humiliated father," he said. "I'm going as a man." Helena placed a hand over her heart. "And me, how am I going?" she asked. Augusto touched her face with tenderness. "You're going as my wife," he said. "The woman who held my whole world together when I thought it would collapse." Helena blinked quickly so the tears wouldn't fall. While Augusto double-checked the folder and the camera, Helena went to the bedroom and took out her cream-colored dress, the nicest one she had. She put on a bit of lipstick, pinned her hair into a simple bun, and when she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw a woman who, despite everything, was still standing. Around 6:30 in the evening, already dark, they got in the car. The street glittered with Christmas decorations, but to them it felt like there was only one house in that city that really mattered. Or rather, one house that was about to become the stage for a reckoning years in the making. Helena held her husband's arm when they parked across the street from Marcelo and Luisa's upscale home. Cars lined the driveway and stretched down the curb, people arriving in elegant clothes, carrying expensive wine, gift boxes with big shiny bows. Through the window, they could see the warm blink of the huge Christmas tree lights. "Look," Helena said, pointing subtly, "there's Luisa's mother and her father." They stood at the door, welcoming guests with smiles that made it look like nothing had happened at the airport the day before. Beside them, Marcelo smiled nervously, while Luisa, perfectly made up, moved around the living room with a wineglass in hand. "They look so sure of themselves," Helena said, tightening her seatbelt. "So certain they've won." Augusto unbuckled, picked up the folder, and took a deep breath. "Let's go," he said. Helena stepped out of the car, her hands shaking. "Augusto, what if no one listens?" she asked. He shut the door, offered her his arm, and answered, "Helena, when the truth walks into a room, no one can pretend they didn't hear it." They crossed the street, climbed the steps to the front door, and knocked twice, firmly. The door opened, Marcello, upon seeing his parents, went pale. "Dad, Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked. Augusto smiled, calm. "We came to wish everyone a Merry Christmas," he said, "and to bring a gift." Luisa appeared immediately behind Marcello, her face frozen somewhere between shock and rage. "You can't come in," she hissed. "Not tonight." Augusto raised the folder. "Luisa, my dear, tonight we're not asking to come in," he said. "Tonight we're making an announcement." And he stepped over the threshold. The guests gathered around the dining table stood to stare. The room was packed. 12 faces, some well-known around town, others just curious, turned toward the couple. An uncomfortable silence fell instantly. Helena, trembling, clung to her husband's arm. Luisa hurried after them, frantic. "You're going to ruin everything," she whispered, furious. Augusto turned to the guests. With a clear, steady voice, he said, "Good evening. I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner. I know we're not on the guest list." He paused, looking each of them in the eye. "But I believe you need to know who these people really are, the ones who, according to this couple here," he pointed to Alvaro and Beatrice, "say I'm not on their level." Several guests murmured. Luisa tried to step in. "This is absurd. Augusto, stop this right." But Augusto was already opening the folder, and each document he pulled out seemed to rip one more strip from their carefully constructed image. "These are bank statements from the last 5 years, he said, laying the first bundle on the sideboard. "You'll see how much money left my home to keep this one running." The guests leaned forward. "This one is the proof of payment for the kitchen remodel," Augusto said, placing another stack. "This is the down payment on the house. These are the electric bills, water, HOA fees, groceries, all paid by us." Helena stood still, but her face had changed. It wasn't just pain anymore. There was a dignity there she didn't know she still had. The guests looked at one another. Some picked up the papers and started reading. Alvaro tried to speak. "This is an invasion of privacy, an outrage." But one of the guests, a woman in a navy blazer, held up the documents and frowned. "Luisa, is this true?" she asked. Luisa swallowed hard, beginning to stammer. This is blown out of proportion. They helped because they wanted to." "And did they also want to be left out of Christmas?" Augusto asked, looking straight at Marcello. Marcello opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The woman in the blazer closed the folder. "You invited us here to meet your family," she said, her voice rigid. "But you left out the part where you've been living off them." The guests began to murmur, some with unmistakable disapproval. After a few seconds that felt like hours, Augusto raised his voice just enough. "I didn't come here to humiliate anyone." He looked at his son. "I came to take back what was stolen from me, the right to be treated like a human being." Helena added softly but firmly, "We're simple people, but we're not disposable." A deep silence settled over the room. Then Augusto closed the folder, turned to Marcello and said, "You can go on with your dinner now. This is the first time in 5 years I've walked into this house without paying for it." And he headed for the door, hand in hand with Helena. When they reached the sidewalk, Helena finally broke down in tears, not out of sadness, but relief. "Augusto," she sobbed, "you did that for us." He held her tight. "For us, Helena, for us." And there, on a street glowing with Christmas lights that weren't meant for them, they found something that had never been on their son's table. Dignity. And a quiet spark of rebirth. The days that followed that Christmas were strange in town. News of the scene at Marcello and Luisa's dinner spread faster than gossip outside a church door. The polite society, the same one that liked to parade perfect smiles and speeches about family values, was now whispering in corners, cafes, and upscale stores. And for the first time, It wasn't Augusto's name on everyone's lips. It was theirs. That same week, Helena noticed the phone barely rang at all. The silence that had once hurt now sounded like rest. But as always happens, when the truth exposes a wound, consequences soon followed. And they arrived inside a plain brown envelope the mailman brought on a cold March morning. "Augusto!" Helena called, holding the letter. "There's something strange here." He wiped the grease from his hands. He'd spent the morning fixing a cabinet door that always stuck, and walked over. On the envelope it said, "Notice of default, final warning." Augusto opened it slowly. Helena stood, hands clasped. The words jumped off the page like a sentence. 3 months past due. Risk of foreclosure. Final deadline, 14 days. Augusto sighed. Not in surprise. He'd been expecting something like this, but in confirmation. "So, it's here," he said, folding the paper and setting it on the table. Helena covered her mouth with her hand. "It's their house, Augusto. Tomas lives there," she whispered. "I know, Helena," Augusto said, sitting down, "but that bill was never ours." That afternoon, the phone rang for the first time since Christmas. It was Marcelo. Augusto let it ring. Helena looked at him, worried. "You're not going to answer?" she asked. "Not today," he said. The phone rang again, and again, and again, until at last Helena touched his arm, her eyes pleading with him to pick up at least once. Augusto took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Marcelo." His son's voice came through, a mix of desperation and shame. Dad, for the love of God, something happened." "I know what happened," Augusto said. "Dad, it's serious. The house. We're going to lose the house. They gave us a final deadline. It's a lot of money, Dad. I don't know what to do." Augusto stayed silent for a few seconds, the kind of silence Marcelo wasn't used to hearing from his father. A silence that didn't rush to promise, hug, or provide easy answers. "Marcelo," Augusto said at last, "do you remember what I told you that night at Christmas?" Marcelo choked. "Dad, please, help me. I swear I'll change. I swear I'll change everything. I'll do whatever you ask. Just don't let Tomas lose his home." Helena, listening in, covered her face with her hands, but Augusto remained steady. "Marcelo," he said, "you're over 30. When did you decide you didn't need to be responsible for your own home anymore?" Marcelo began to cry. "I don't know. I messed up. I let Luisa run everything. I let her decide everything. I was weak." Augusto clenched his jaw. "You weren't weak, Marcelo. You were comfortable," he said. On the other end, the sobbing grew louder. Dad, please, I'm begging you, help me, just this once." Helena looked at her husband, tears in her eyes, hoping, but Augusto slowly shook his head sadly. "Marcelo," he said, "son, listen closely. I'm not paying another cent." Marcelo went quiet with shock. "What do you mean, Dad? What do you mean?" "I'm not paying anymore," Augusto repeated. "I spent years carrying a burden that wasn't mine. Now it's time for you to carry what's yours." "Dad," his son's voice cracked, "we're going to lose everything." "Maybe you'll lose the house, Marcelo," Augusto said, sorrowful, "but maybe you'll find humility." There was a long silence. Then Marcelo asked the one question that can break any father's heart. Then what's a father even for, if not to help when his son falls? Augusto took a deep breath, closed his eyes. "To teach his son to stand back up," he answered, and he hung up. Helena began to cry softly. Augusto held her, though his own heart felt like it was splitting. "Augusto?" Helena sobbed. "Do you really think he's going to learn?" "I don't know," Augusto said honestly, "but I do know that as long as I keep fixing everything for him, he'll never try." "But what about Tomas?" Helena cried. "He's just a child." Augusto brushed a hand along her cheek. Tomas will see that his grandparents are still the same people, Augusto said. We're not abandoning our grandson. We're just refusing to keep funding a lie. Helena rested her head against his chest. I trust you, she said, barely above a whisper. But it hurts so much. I know, Helena. I know, he said. And that night found them holding each other, carrying not just their love, but the weight of decisions that sometimes fall on those who are simply too tired of suffering in silence. 3 days later, just as Augusto had predicted, the inevitable happened. At around 7:30 in the evening, someone knocked on their door. This time it wasn't aggressive, it was weak, small, as if whoever was on the other side was afraid of their own shadow. Augusto opened it, and there he was, Marcelo. Eyes red, stubble on his face, shoulders slumped like a little boy who'd lost his shoe in the middle of the street. Dad, Marcelo said, barely audible. I had to see you. Helena lifted her hand to her face, moved. Come in, son, she said. Marcelo stepped in, and the moment he saw the simple dinner table set for two, he collapsed into a chair and began to cry openly, like a man who no longer had anywhere left to hide his shame. Augusto brought him a glass of water. Dad, I wrecked everything, Marcelo said. I wrecked my house, I wrecked my marriage, I wrecked Christmas. I even wrecked the way Tomas looks at me. Helena sat beside him and slowly put an arm around his shoulders. Son, what happened? She asked. Marcelo wiped his face. Luisa, she blames you, Dad, he said. She says you did this to humiliate her. And my in-laws, they're not speaking to me anymore. They felt exposed, ridiculed. They said they'll never set foot in my house again. Augusto folded his arms. And the bank? He asked. Marcelo dropped his head. They're done negotiating, he said. They want full payment of everything we owe, or they'll go to court. Helena pressed a hand over her own heart, anxious. And Luisa? She asked carefully. Marcelo sighed. Luisa went back to her parents' place, he said. She says she needs time. Says I failed as a husband. Says I should have put limits on you two. Says I was weak. Helena's eyes widened. Limits? Children saying their parents need limits, she muttered. Augusto laid his hand flat on the table, firm. Marcelo, he said, did you come here for money? His son looked up at him as if standing in front of a door he didn't know how to open. I came to ask for forgiveness, Marcelo said. Helena brought her hand to her mouth, surprised. Marcelo went on, his voice trembling. Dad, Mom, I was unfair. I let Luisa turn me into someone I'm not. I let their ambition become mine. I let them pull me away from you. I thought that if I had the right house, the right furniture, the right life, I'd be somebody. But today I see I turned into nobody. Helena cried in silence. Augusto leaned forward. And what is it you want now, Marcelo? He asked. Marcelo took a deep breath. I want to rebuild what I destroyed, he said. Augusto didn't smile. He didn't hug him, but something inside him softened. This has always been your home, Augusto said. But now you come in as a man, not as a boy. Marcelo nodded, understanding. I accept that, he said. Whatever it takes. Augusto laced his fingers in front of him. Then listen, Marcelo. Listen carefully, he said. I'm not paying your debt. I'm not saving your house. Because if I do that, you'll just keep being the same man you were before, the one who waits for someone else to fix everything. Marcelo bowed his head, but this time he didn't cry. But I will help you, Augusto added. Just not with money. Marcelo looked up, confused. I'm going to help you become a man, Augusto said. I think it's time. Helena took her husband's hand. In that gesture, Augusto understood he wasn't carrying any of this alone. That night, Marcelo did not get financial rescue, but he was welcomed back emotionally, and that was the first step toward rebuilding. The next day, he would go back for his things, not to run away, but to begin a simple, honest life, with his parents, with humility, with truth, and far away from the glass castle that had almost destroyed his soul. Helena woke early the next morning. The sun was weak as it filtered through the kitchen window, turning dust in the air into tiny floating specks of light. She made coffee slowly, feeling a strange mix of ache and hope. Marcelo had slept on the couch, the same couch where he'd crashed so many times as a kid after school, complaining about how tired he was. Now there lay a broken man, but for the first time in a long while, he seemed willing to put himself back together. Augusto stepped into the kitchen and found Helena standing at the window, lost in thought. "Did you sleep?" he asked, pouring himself coffee. "Almost not at all," she said, "but I guess that's what it's like when a life is changing." Augusto touched her shoulder. "Today will be a hard day for him," Augusto said. "And for us too." Helena sighed. "Do you think he can handle it, Augusto? The shame, losing the house, facing his wife, facing her parents?" she asked. Augusto looked over at the couch where Marcelo lay curled up. "The question isn't if he can handle it, Helena. It's whether he finally understands that the life he was living wasn't his," he said. Just then, Marcelo stirred, opened his eyes slowly, like someone waking from a nightmare. When he saw his parents in the kitchen, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Morning," he murmured, his voice low and hoarse. Helena walked over and hugged him, like she had so many times when he was small. "Good morning, my son," she said. He hugged her back, but stayed tense, not from coldness, but from guilt. Augusto sat at the table and motioned for Marcelo to join them. Marcelo sat down carefully, wrapping his hands around the warm mug as if drawing strength from the heat. "Dad, Mom," he began, his voice shaking. I want to ask for your forgiveness again. I was an idiot. I was ungrateful. I let them turn me into a man I don't recognize." Helena took his hand. "Son, owning that is already a beginning," she said. Marcelo breathed deeply. I need to go get my things," he said. He paused, swallowed. "Luisa said she doesn't want me at home until I get my life together. And my life, I don't even know what it is anymore." Augusto watched him for a few seconds, then spoke calmly. "Your life starts when you stop living someone else's," he said. Marcelo nodded, crying quietly. Later that same day, Augusto drove the car back to the subdivision where Marcelo and Luisa lived. Helena went with them, but stayed in the car, praying silently. Every fancy gate they passed, every perfectly manicured lawn, only made Marcelo's stomach twist harder. That house, which once symbolized achievement, now looked like a monument to his pride and his shame. When Augusto parked, Marcelo closed his eyes for a moment, bracing himself. "Want me to walk up with you?" Augusto asked. Marcelo shook his head. I need to do this alone," he said. He stepped out of the car, straightened his shirt, took a breath, and walked up to his own front door like he was stepping into hostile territory. He rang the doorbell. Luisa opened. Her face didn't show longing, only anger. "Where'd you find the guts to show up?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Came to wave your little white flag to Daddy? Came to beg him to pay for everything again? Don't you have any shame?" Marcelo breathed in slowly. "I'm not here asking him for anything. And I'm not asking you for anything either," he said. "You came for your clothes. Great, they're in the bedroom. But first I want you to know I deserved way more than this. Way more than the life you can give me," she snapped. Marcelo looked at her for the first time without lowering his eyes. "Luisa," he said steady, "the life you wanted wasn't life. It was a display window." She laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. "And now, what do you prefer?" she asked. "To live like your parents? Soup and a saggy old couch? Congratulations, Marcelo. You got the mediocrity that suits you so well." Marcelo drew a deep breath and said the one thing he never imagined he'd be able to say: "If being decent is mediocre, then I'd rather be mediocre." For the first time, something hurt her pride deeply. She didn't answer. She just turned her back and let him walk in silence. Marcelo went upstairs, opened the closet, and pulled out some clothes, a few keepsakes, a framed picture of Tomas smiling. Looking at that picture, his chest tightened. "For you, my boy, for you, I'm going to do everything different," he thought. As he packed, he heard his in-laws' voices from downstairs. "He came back. Ridiculous. He'll pay for what he did. Serves him right. He never should have mixed with people like that." Words that once slid past him now cut like knives. When he came down with his suitcase, he found Luisa standing in the living room, staring at the still-decorated Christmas tree, now dulled and lifeless, like a forgotten prop from a party no one wanted to remember. "You're not seeing Tomas today," Luisa said flatly. "He's at my parents' house." Marcelo closed his eyes for a second, but didn't react with anger. "I'll come get him tomorrow to spend the day with me," Marcelo said simply. "I doubt it," she shot back. "I'm going to talk to my lawyer." "And I," Marcelo said without hesitation, "am going to talk to my conscience. It's cleaner than it's been in years." That was when Augusto stepped out of the car and appeared at the doorway. Marcelo hadn't noticed his father moving closer. "Ready, son?" Augusto asked. Marcelo nodded, eyes shining. "Ready," he said. Luisa glared at Augusto with contempt. "Congratulations," she said. "You destroyed your own son's family." Augusto answered with the calm of a man who's seen the whole world try to collapse on him and survive. "My dear, I didn't destroy anything," he said. "You all built a castle out of air. I just stopped blowing." Marcelo lowered his head, moved. Father and son walked away from that fancy house, empty of soul. From the car, Helena saw her son approaching with his suitcase. She cried, but this time it wasn't just sadness. It was relief. It was rebirth. It was a mother getting back the son she thought she'd lost forever. In the days that followed, Marcelo moved into the small guest room, a simple, honest space. Helena washed his clothes, put some away in the empty closet, made the bed with the tender care only mothers have. Every night Augusto talked with him about work, responsibility, choices. "A man isn't measured by what he has, Marcelo," Augusto said, "but by what he refuses to sell." Marcelo listened. Every word found its way into places pride had lived for years. For the first time since marrying Luisa, he started looking for a job, not to keep up appearances, but to rebuild his dignity. Each morning he woke up in that small home, smelling coffee, day-old bread, clothes hanging behind the door. He remembered something he'd forgotten. Life didn't have to be big. It just had to be real. 4 days after Marcelo returned to his parents' home, Sunday dawn quiet, the sky covered in grey clouds. Helena made lunch, fluffy rice, chicken stew with potatoes, fresh parsley chopped at the last minute, while Augusto set the table with the care of someone who knows the day will matter. Marcelo was in his room, trying to quiet his thoughts. He looked at the half-open suitcase on the floor, the few folded clothes, his son's picture. His heart felt heavy. Guilt, shame, and something new, the desire to make things right. Around 11, Augusto's phone buzzed. It was a message from Luisa, just one short line. "Tomas is ready. Come get him by noon." Marcelo read the message over his father's shoulder. For a second, his face crumpled. "She agreed. She actually agreed," he said. Helena, listening, brought a hand to her chest. "Thank God," she murmured. "The boy has no fault in any of this." Augusto grabbed the car keys. "Let's go," he said. Marcelo hesitated. "Dad, will you come with me?" he asked. Augusto placed a hand on his shoulder. Of course, he said. The drive back to the old house. As they drove back to the subdivision, Marcelo couldn't stop fidgeting with his hands. The quiet in the car was heavy, but Augusto recognized the quiet of a man rebuilding himself from the inside. When they parked in front of the house, Marcelo exhaled deeply. I'm scared of how he's going to look at me, Marcelo said. Son, kids don't hold grudges, Augusto answered. They hold memories, and the best part is you can make new ones. Marcelo nodded, holding back tears. The door opens. They rang the bell. Quick footsteps approached. The door opened, and there he was, Tomás. About 5 years old now, dark hair, big eyes, with an innocence no adult argument could truly damage. Daddy! He ran and threw himself into Marcelo's arms. With such force his father almost fell back. Marcelo cried right there on the step, on his knees, clinging to his son with a desperate love. I missed you so much, Marcelo sobbed. Tomás cupped his father's face with both hands. Why didn't you sleep at home, Daddy? He asked. Marcelo closed his eyes, and in that moment, it wasn't Augusto who answered for him. It was Marcelo, with truth, with pain, with courage. Because Daddy messed up, he said, and now he's learning how to fix it. The boy frowned slightly, but wrapped his arms around his father's neck even tighter, as if to say that was enough. Luisa appeared at the door, arms crossed, face tight. But for whatever reason, she stayed silent. Maybe because deep down she knew she couldn't control that moment anymore. Maybe because she understood that Tomás loved his father in a way no ambition could erase. Augusto walked up politely. Good morning, Luisa, he said. She answered with a curt nod. He's back by 6, she said. Marcelo nodded. 6 o'clock, he said. Without another word, father and son walked down the steps together. Tomás held Marcelo's hand, but turned back to wave at Augusto. Grandpa, are you coming with us? He called. Augusto smiled, a smile so genuine Helena would have recognized it from miles away. I am, my boy, he said. And Tomás replied, full of excitement, Good! Grandma made chicken, right? Marcelo laughed for the first time in a long while. Helena stood waiting at the apartment door, her fingers twisting her apron. When Tomás came running in, she almost collapsed. Grandma! He threw himself into her arms, and she lifted him, struggling, but with the kind of emotion that can lend strength even to the most tired body. My sweet boy, you're so big, she said. I'm hungry, he laughed. I want your chicken. Helena cupped his face, and for a moment a tear slipped free, but it was the kind that heals. They set the table, and the 4 of them sat down like a real family. No luxury, no china, no expensive wine, no imported curtains. Just rice, chicken, potatoes, and enough love to feed a whole building. Tomás talked non-stop. Grandpa, can I help you later? Daddy, can I sleep here next time? Grandma, make that cake I like? And with every sentence Helena and Augusto saw, the boy's heart was intact, and Marcelo's was beginning to heal. After lunch, Augusto washed dishes with Marcelo. In the living room, Tomás played with Helena, working on an old puzzle she kept in the closet for special visits. Marcelo looked at his father, dish still wet in his hands. You know what I felt today? He asked. What? Augusto said. That I came home, Marcelo answered. Augusto dried his hands. That's because you did, Marcelo, he said. But this time you came back as a man, and that makes all the difference. Marcelo nodded, looking into the living room at his son, his mother. Dad, he said, voice thick, I swear I'm going to honor you, both of you, I swear. Augusto placed a hand on his shoulder. Honor, Marcelo, isn't sworn, it's lived. he said, and in that moment Marcelo truly understood. Later, when Tomas fell asleep for a few minutes on the couch, Helena called Augusto into the kitchen. "I'm scared, Augusto," she said. He came closer, worried. "Scared of what, Helena?" he asked. "Scared Luisa is going to use the boy as a bargaining chip, to pull him away from Marcelo, or from us," Helena said. Augusto breathed deeply. "She's going to try, Helena. People full of arrogance always try to control what they don't understand," he said. "And what are we going to do?" Helena asked, anxious. "We're going to be everything they never were," Augusto answered. "Real family." Helena stepped toward him and rested her head on his chest. "Augusto, do you think that finally, after so much hurt, our life is moving in the right direction?" she asked. Augusto kissed the top of her head. "I think so, Helena. But there's still one part left," he said. She pulled back slightly. "What part?" she asked. "The part where they learn that dignity doesn't have a price," Augusto said. Helena took a deep breath, feeling that good kind of foreboding, the feeling life sometimes gives when it's about to turn a page. A page that this time wouldn't hurt. On Monday morning, Marcelo woke up early. The sun was barely up when he walked into the kitchen and found Augusto at the table, reading the weekend's old newspaper. One he read slowly, like every article was smaller than real life. "Dad," Marcelo said, voice still rough from sleep. "I'm going to look for a job today." Augusto looked up. "Do you have a resume?" he asked. Marcelo took a deep breath. "I'm going to write one now," he said. Helena appeared in the hallway in her nightgown, hair in a loose bun. "Son, want some coffee?" she asked. "Yeah, Mom. But first I need to admit something," Marcelo said. Augusto and Helena exchanged a glance. Marcelo continued. "I never had to write my own resume. Luisa did it. Or her dad got me interviews. Or I pretended I was starting my own thing while you two paid the bills," he said, looking down, embarrassed. "Today I want to do it myself. For me. For Tomas." Augusto closed the paper slowly. "Come sit down then," he said. "I'll help you remember who you were, before you tried to be who everyone else wanted you to be." Marcelo smiled, a weak but honest smile. He sat there between his parents like when he was a kid doing homework. Helena, with her round, careful handwriting, wrote on a notepad, "Marcelo Nogueira, 34 years old, some college, experience in sales, customer service, logistics." "Is all that true?" Helena asked. Marcelo smiled sideways. "Yeah, but I always thought it wasn't enough," he said. "Because that's what Luisa said." Augusto squeezed his shoulder. "What's really not enough is living someone else's life," he said. "The rest, we can build." Marcelo nodded, wiping away a quick tear. That same day, Marcelo left with a simple plastic folder, bought at the corner stationery store. It wasn't the leather portfolio Luisa had picked out to match his image. It was just a regular folder, but this time it was honest. He went to 3 different businesses and dropped off his resume. Some doors closed with polite excuses. Others didn't open at all, but at one, an independent hardware and construction supply store, the manager looked at him with open, honest eyes. "Have you worked with customers before?" the man asked. "Yes, sir," Marcelo answered, "and I know I have to start from the bottom." The manager gestured for him to come farther in. "Everyone starts from the bottom," he said. "What matters is not staying there." Right there, they scheduled a formal interview for the next day. When Marcelo stepped out of the shop, he texted his father a short message. "Dad, I think I got a real shot this time." Augusto read the message while fixing a leaky faucet and smiled to himself, a smile Helena noticed without him saying a word. "Good news?" she asked. "It's a beginning," he answered. "And beginnings are always good things." While Marcelo was starting over, a different kind of storm was brewing back at the fancy house. One afternoon, Beatrice, Luisa's mother, walked into an upscale bakery, the same one she always visited on Wednesdays. But this time she noticed the stares, the whispers, people turning away and muttering under their breath. That's her, the one who lived off her son-in-law. Can you imagine the scene at that Christmas dinner? And they still acted like they were better than everyone. Beatrice felt her face burn. No one said any of it to her face. They didn't need to. The truth, the same truth Augusto exposed without shouting or violence, was doing its work. Alvaro, meanwhile, was quietly frozen out at a business club meeting. Every time he tried to speak, the conversation shifted. People avoided eye contact, made vague references to ethics and character. He left early, jaw tight with anger. When he got home, he exploded at Luisa. That old man, that miserable old man, ruined our reputation. Luisa sat on the couch, staring at her phone without seeing it. "The reputation you built didn't have anything real holding it up," she said, bitter. "A facade doesn't survive contact with the truth." Alvaro went silent for a moment. Beatrice glared at her daughter. "And you're the one who brought those people into our family," she snapped. Luisa stood, bitterly amused. "Those people who paid for your trip to Aspen, Mom," she said, "who bought your new AC, who covered half your kitchen remodel. Maybe choose your words more carefully." Beatrice went pale. Alvaro stormed out of the room. It was the first real crack in that perfect family, and it would be the first of many. That night, back in the modest apartment, Augusto's family sat down for dinner. Tomas was with them again, playing with a little plastic truck Augusto had saved for years. Elena set fresh bread on the table. Marcelo helped cut cheese. Augusto poured orange juice. Everything simple, everything real, everything they'd always had, but that Marcelo for years had considered not enough. As they ate, Tomas suddenly remembered. "Daddy, you said you'd tell the story of when you were little," he said. Marcelo smiled. "That's right. I did," he said. He looked over at Augusto and Helena, silently asking permission. They nodded. So Marcelo began, "When I was little, your grandpa used to wake up at 5 in the morning to go to work," he said, "and your grandma would make coffee, pack my lunch, and get my backpack ready, and I thought that was normal. I thought they had to do that because it was their job. But I grew up and I forgot to say thank you." Tomas grew quiet, listening closely. Marcelo took another breath. "Now I know, son. They did it because they loved me. And I still have a lot to learn," he said. Tomas climbed down from his chair and hugged his dad. "I love you, Daddy," he said. Marcelo cried silently, hiding his face on his son's shoulder. Helena wiped her own eyes. Augusto watched the scene with the kind of quiet pride only men who've suffered a lot can feel. And there, in that small, dimly lit room with little money and lots of love, a whole family truly began to rebuild. Not through money, not through appearances, but through truth, through dignity, through affection, through rebirth. The days that followed went by quickly, and for the first time in a long while, they were headed in the right direction. Marcelo went to his interview at the construction supply store. The manager liked him, liked his honesty, the way he looked people in the eye without arrogance or excuses. At the end of their conversation, the manager shook his hand. "You start Monday?" he said. "The pay is modest, but it's honest. And here, people who work hard move up." Marcelo walked out of the store with his heart pounding. He sent his father a text. "I got the job." In the kitchen, Augusto and Helena celebrated quietly, hugging for a long time. They didn't need words. They were witnessing their son's rebirth. A week later, the final letter from the bank arrived for Marcelo and Luisa. There was no saving the house now. The debt was too big, the interest too high, the pride even higher. Luisa tried to blame Augusto, the bank, anyone but herself. On one last phone call with Marcelo, she hurled her fury. "You destroyed everything, Marcelo. I refuse to live like a poor person. I refuse to live like your parents." Marcelo took a slow breath. "Luisa, nobody destroyed anything," he said. "What you called a life never really existed." "I'm not coming back to you," she screamed. "And I'm not going back to a lie," Marcelo answered, in a calm he didn't recognize in himself, and he hung up. It was over. Tomas began staying with his father 3 times a week, not because of legal battles, but because that's what actually worked. Luisa was too busy crying to her parents, and they were too busy dealing with their own social humiliation. So the boy found shelter in Augusto and Helena's modest home. And there, he learned things you don't learn in big houses: how to bake bread with Grandma, how to tighten a screw with Grandpa, how to listen to stories without a screen, how to be loved without conditions. One Sunday afternoon, after lunch, Marcelo walked out onto the small balcony where his parents sat. He stood in front of them, like a man finally able to recognize himself. "Dad, Mom, I know nothing I do will erase the years I threw away," Marcelo said. "But I promise from now on, you'll never carry weight that belongs to me." Helena took his hand, moved. "You're already doing that, my son," she said. Marcelo went on. "I wanted to say thank you," he said, "for opening your door, for letting me come back, for not throwing my mistakes in my face, and for teaching me all over again what family really is." Augusto watched him for a few seconds, then spoke with that gentle firmness that had always been his. "Marcelo, you didn't come back to us because you fell," he said. "You came back because you decided to get up, and that is what makes you a man." Marcelo dropped his gaze, but didn't cry this time. It was something else. It was peace. Tomas came running across the balcony with a little toy car in his hands, laughing. Augusto scooped him up easily, despite the years written in his shoulders. "Grandpa, let's play," he asked. "Let's go, my boy," Augusto said. Helena watched the scene with shining eyes. Marcelo watched too, and finally grasped the size of that simple, immense love, a love that had never asked him for anything, and had given him everything. As the sun set, Marcelo sat beside his father. "Dad, after everything that's happened, do you know what I've learned?" he asked. "What, son?" Augusto said. "That life isn't measured by the size of the house, but by the size of the heart that lives inside it," Marcelo said. Augusto smiled, a light, honest smile full of truth. "And just like that, Marcelo, you finally understand," he said. A soft breeze passed by, carrying with it the smell of bread baking in the oven and the sound of Helena humming in the kitchen. The small home felt bigger than any mansion, more alive, more full, more real. And there on that little balcony, bathed in late afternoon light, a family was reborn, not perfect, not rich, not superior, but dignified, united, and finally at peace. "Life always gives back what you put into it," Augusto said, looking up at the sky. And Marcelo smiled, because that day he knew he was finally getting back everything he never should have lost. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories of family, resilience, and redemption.